I started as a name creative. It's one of those things that you get into by accident, I think, sometimes. When I was at school, I always used to like creating things and writing stories and making creative things, working with words. And a friend of mine told me about this company, and so I started coming along as a creative. But I also really enjoy giving presentations, and I really was fascinated by what happens after we create our names as creatives, and then somebody takes them away and does something magical with them and turns them into brands. So that I got into it through being a creative, and was more interested in finding out about what happens next, really. I think it does require a certain set of specialist skills. For one, you need to be creative, and a lot of people are creative, but not everybody is creative. Then once you've got the name, you need to have an idea of strategic thinking. You need to be able to pick the best names from what might be a list of 500, 1,000 ideas that different people have put forward. So you need to have an idea of the market. You need to be able to follow a brief, and that's actually another particular skill that most people underappreciate, is the ability to actually take a brief and follow the brief according to what the client wants and not just what you would like to see. So yeah, there are different skills that I think you need. People generally are quite surprised to find out that there are naming experts out there. It's not a very well-known field of expertise, but it is an important one. I think people are quite surprised at first, but when you explain to them exactly what's involved, it becomes evident that there is a need for naming experts. Anyone can sit down and come up with name ideas, especially if it's a project that's something you believe in and that's close to your heart. But the ability to pick something that has longevity, that bears in mind future evolution of products, and the ability to think strategically about positioning and so on. I think that's experience of creating a broad range of names on a subject, whilst at the same time sticking to a brief, is actually quite difficult. So yeah, it's definitely an acquired skill. The naming, coming up with the final name involves quite a lot of steps. Again, a lot more than people would expect. When they think that it's not just sitting down. It's not just sitting down and coming up with a list of ideas, in the pub or something. So there is the creative side of things, but then there's also, if you're going to create a brand, you need to think about other elements such as the logo, other visual elements. You also need to think about ownability, which means you may need to check for trademarks. You may need to use Google checking or other checking to see what's out there in the world and how people are using the word or the name that you've created. You need to think about linguistic issues as well. Will your name travel? If your brand needs to be seen in other countries or in different markets, and you also need to think about your target market. So there'll be creation, and then there'll be a lot of checking and research and investigation as well involved. The time frame can vary wildly, to be honest. You can obviously come up with a list of creative ideas in an afternoon, but that is, that's not the same as coming up with a valid and trustworthy name, brand name. So, obviously the more time that you can commit to the process, the better, really. And that's not to say the longer the better, but the more you can give the process in terms of thoroughness, the better. So it can take several weeks, especially when you take into account availability of all the necessary team members. It's important to have the right people making decisions about the names, so all those people need to be available. You will start off with a wide brief, and you want to end up with a small short list of potential candidates, and that filtering process does take time. And if you then add into the mix other brand elements such as logos and other communication elements, and those kinds of things can take months. And then when you're trying to register a trademark, that process itself can take months. It can vary quite a lot, anywhere between sort of a few weeks and several months.